Okay, everybody, welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 17. Mother Parvati curses Citraketu, which is a wonderful story. And it's the actual end of this whole saga of the story of Vritrasura, the great demon Vritrasura, how he came about. So if you guys can remember, and Rama Raghava, maybe you could help us remember a little bit. The story started when Indra killed his spiritual master. Am I right? So what happened was he was cursed and he was chased by sin personified. Do we remember that? Chased him all over the universe and he hid in Manasarovara Lake, right? Okay. Tell me if I'm getting off track now. I'm doing this from memory, okay? I didn't rehearse this one. I may need your help. So what happened was he did penance for doing that, but he was given a new spiritual master, right? And that spiritual master was also from a demoniac family. So what he had been doing was, while he was offering oblations to the demigods, he was also offering oblations to the demons at the same time. And when Indra found out about it, he was like incensed. He was like angry. So that's how this whole story got started. And Rama Raghava, you remember that part? Yep. So
yes.
Yep. So how did they come up with Vritrasura? What did they do? You remember?
I think during a fire sacrifice.
With the bones, right?
Yeah.
Of the spiritual master. So what happened is they created this great demon that was actually took over the whole universe. Literally usurped them from their heavenly kingdoms and so forth and so on. And so much so that Indra had to be given Narayana Kuvacha's shield. He had to be given the thunderbolt, right? He had to be given the thunderbolt to be able to kill Vritrasura. And so the story goes on and it metamorphosizes into this Citraketu story. So this should wind up the story for us of the whole saga and how Vritrasura came about. And if I've misquoted anything, I promise you I will fix it when we edit this, okay? Because we're going to edit this into a storyline in a booklet. Did I miss anything? Missed quite a bit, I know. Well, yeah, I did. There's so much nuance to the story, but the idea is, how did this great demon come about? So, text 1. Well, by the way, Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devim Gaudavani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shinyavari Pastyachari Shatarane. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Shivati Gudhar Shivasti Gaud Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so text 1. Srila Sukadeva Goswami said, after offering obeisances to the direction from which Ananta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had disappeared, Citraketu began traveling in outer space as the head of the Vidyadharas, being praised by great sages and saints and by the inhabitants of Siddhaloka and Charnaloka. Citraketu, the most powerful mystic yogi, wandered about enjoying life for millions of years. With bodily strength and senses free from deterioration, he traveled within the valleys of Sumeru Mountain, which is the place of perfection for various kinds of mystic power. In those valleys, he enjoyed life with the women of the Vidyadhara Loka by chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord Hari. One time, while King Citraketu was traveling in outer space on a brilliantly effulgent airplane given to him by Lord Vishnu, he saw Lord Shiva surrounded by siddhas and charanas. Lord Shiva was sitting in an assembly of great saintly persons and embracing Parvati on his lap with his arm. Citraketu laughed loudly and spoke within the hearing of Parvati. Citraketu said, Lord Shiva, the spiritual master of the general populace, is the best of all living entities who have accepted material bodies. He enunciates the system of religion. Yet how wonderful it is that he is embracing his wife, Parvati, in the midst of an assembly of great saintly persons. Lord Shiva, whose hair is matted on his head, has certainly undergone great austerities and penances. Indeed, he is the president in the assembly of strict followers of Vedic principles. Nonetheless, he is seated with his wife on his lap in the midst of saintly persons, and he is embracing her as if he were a shameless, ordinary human being. Now, he's kind of laughing and sort of mocking him a little bit while he's doing this, because he's pretty proud of himself, right? He's been given this airplane. He's got prowess all over the whole material universe. He's worshipped everywhere he goes, right? So he's kind of a little puffed up, it sounds like. So he's kind of going, hey, how does this happen? He goes, ordinary conditioned persons generally embrace their wives and enjoy their company in solitary places. But how wonderful it is that Lord Mahadev, although a great master of austerity, is embracing his wife openly in the midst of an assembly of great saints. How is this possible? He is wondering. So Srila Sukadeva Goswami continued. My dear king, after hearing Citraketu's statement, Lord Shiva, the most powerful personality whose knowledge is phantomless, simply smiled and remained silent. And all of the members of the assembly followed the Lord by not saying anything. Not knowing the prowess of Lord Shiva and Parvati, Citraketu strongly criticized them. His statements were not at all pleasing, and therefore the goddess Parvati, being very angry, spoke as follows to Citraketu, who thought himself better than Lord Shiva in controlling the senses. So, do we have someone who'd like to take the goddess Parvati at this point and read that for us? And you can be a little bit angry. It's okay.
You know I miss his classes if I could read.
Well, okay. We have a female who wants to read it.
Oh.
We're going to go female first, but if not, we're going to let you read. Do we have a female? Raise your hand if we have a female. No? Okay. You got it then. Go ahead, Rick. You got it?
Who, me?
Yeah. You?
Oh, all right. So I'm the female.
Yes, you are. The goddess Parvati said. That's correct.
The goddess Parvati said, alas, has this upstart now received a post from the witch to punish shameless persons like us? Has he been appointed ruler, carrier of the rod of punishment? Is he now the only master of everything? Alas, Lord Brahma, who has taken his birth from the lotus flower, does not know the principles of religion, nor do the great saints like Brigu and Narada, nor the four Kumaras, headed by Sanata Kumara, Manu, and Kapila, have also forgotten the religious principles. I suppose it be because of this that they have not tried to stop Lord Shiva from behaving improperly. This Citraketu is the lowest of Sattvias, for he has impudently overridden Brahma and other demigods by insulting Lord Shiva, upon whose lotus feet they always meditate. Lord Shiva is personified religion and a spiritual master of the entire world, and therefore Citraketu must be punished. This person is puffed up because of his achievements, thinking, I am the best. He does not deserve the approach of the shelter of Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, which are worshipped by all saintly persons, for he is impudent, thinking of himself greatly important. O impudent one, my dear son, now take birth in a low, sinful family of demons, so that you will not be committed such an offense again toward exalted, saintly persons in this world. Sri Sukadeva Goswami continued, my dear King Parikshit, when Citraketu was cursed by Parvati, he descended from his airplane, bowed before her with her great humility, and pleased her completely. Citraketu said, my dear mother, with my own hands folded together, I accept the curse upon me. I do not mind the curse, for happiness and distress are given by the demigods as a result of one's past deeds. Deluded by ignorance, the living entity wanders in a forest and material world, enjoying the happiness and distress result from his past deeds. Everywhere and at all times, therefore, my dear mother, neither you nor I am to be blamed for this incident. Shall I stop?
How many more verses do we have in this chapter, Rama Raghava?
We have a total of 41 in this chapter.
Yeah, okay. So I guess if everybody reads, say, 10 each, that would be good. Anybody else want to pick
Two
it up?
more verses would be 10 verses for.
Yeah, read two more, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Okay. In this material world, neither the living entity himself nor others, friends and enemies, are the cause of material happiness and distress. But because of gross ignorance, the living entity thinks that he and others are the cause. This material world resembles the waves of constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse? What is a favor? What are the heavenly planets? And what are the hellish planets? What is actually happiness? What is actually distress? Because the waves flow constantly, none of them has an eternal effect. Got it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Jai Krishna. It's so nice to have you back. He brought the dust of Vrindavan to the program this evening, so we want to congratulate you on blessing us with that. Thank you. All right. Rama Raghava, would you like to read?
Okay. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Unaffected by the conditions of the material world, he creates all the conditioned souls by his own personal potency. Because of being contaminated by the material energy, the living entity is put into ignorance and thus into different conditions of bondage. Sometimes, by knowledge, the living entity is given liberation. In Sattva Gun and Rajagun, he is subjected to happiness and distress. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is equally disposed toward all living entities. Therefore, no one is very dear to him, and no one is a great enemy for him. No one is his friend, and no one is his relative. Being unattached to the material world, he has no affection for so-called happiness or hatred for so-called distress. The two terms happiness and distress are relative. Since the Lord is always happy, for him there is no question of distress. Although the Supreme Lord is unattached to our happiness and distress according to karma, and although no one is his enemy or favorite, he creates pious and impious activities through the agency of his material potency. Thus, for the continuation of the materialistic way of life, he creates happiness and distress, good fortune and bad, bondage and liberation, birth and death. O Mother, you are now unnecessarily angry, but since all my happiness and distress are destined by my past activities, I do not plead to be excused or relieved from your curse. Although what I have said is not wrong, please let whatever you think is wrong be pardoned. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, O King Parikshit, subduer of the enemy, after Citraketu satisfied Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati, he boarded his airplane and left as they looked on. When Lord Shiva and Parvati saw that Citraketu, although informed of the curse, was unafraid, they smiled, being fully astonished by his behavior. Thereafter, in the presence of the great sage Narada, the demons, the inhabitants of Siddhaloka, and his personal associates, Lord Shiva, who is most powerful, spoke to his wife Parvati while they all listened. Lord Shiva said, My dear beautiful Parvati, have you seen the greatness of the Vaishnavas? Being servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, they are great souls and are not interested in any kind of material happiness. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same, for such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. Because of the actions of the Supreme Lord's external energy, the living entities are conditioned in contact with material bodies. The dualities of happiness and distress, birth and death, curses and favors are natural byproducts of this contact in the material world. As one mistakenly considers a flower garland to be a snake or experiences happiness and distress in a dream, So, in the material world, by a lack of careful consideration, we differentiate between happiness and distress, considering one good and the other bad. That was 10.
Okay. And who else would like to read? Anybody else want to read? We've got 10 more to go.
We got a
I can read.
Eunice must read.
Oh, Eunice, hi. Please.
Hi. Persons engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudev, Krishna have natural perfect knowledge and detachment from this material world. Therefore, such devotees are not interested in the so-called happiness or so-called distress of this world. He holds no one as very dear and no one.
Mm.
Oh, hold on a sec. Neither I, Lord Shiva, nor Brahma, nor Ashvina Kumars, nor Narada, or the other great sages who are Brahma's sons, nor even the demigods can understand the pastimes and personality of the Supreme Lord. Although we are part of the Supreme Lord, we consider ourselves independent, separate controllers, and thus we cannot understand his identity. He holds no one as very dear and no one as inimical. He has no one for his own relative and no one is alien to him. He is actually the soul of all living entities. Thus, he is the auspicious friend of all living beings and is very near and dear to all of them. This magnanimous Citraketu is a clear devotee of the Lord. He is equal to all living entities and free from attachment and hatred. Similarly, I am also very dear to Lord Narayana. Therefore, no one should be astonished to see the activities of the most exalted devotees of Narayana, for they are free from attachments and envy. They are always peaceful and they are equal to everyone. Sri Sukadev Goswami said, O king, after hearing this speech by her husband, the demigoddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva, gave up her astonishment at the behavior of King Citraketu and became steady in intelligence. The great devotee Citraketu was so powerful that he was quite competent to curse Mother Parvati in retaliation. But instead of doing so, he very humbly accepted the curse and bowed his head before Lord Shiva and his wife. This is very much to be appreciated as the standard behavior of Vaishnava. Being cursed by Mother Durga, Bhavani, the wife of Lord Shiva, that same Citraketu accepted birth in a demoniac species of life. Although still fully equipped with transcendental knowledge and practical applications of that knowledge in life, he appeared as a demon at a fire sacrifice performed by Swasta, and thus he became famous as Britasura. My dear King Parikshit, you inquired from me how Britasura, a great devotee, took birth in a demoniac family. Thus, I have tried to explain to you everything about this. Citraketu was a great devotee, Mahatma. If one hears this history of Citraketu from a pure devotee, the listener also is freed from the conditional life of material existence. One who rises from bed early in the morning and recites this history of Citraketu, controlling his words and mind and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, will return home, back to Godhead, without difficulty.
What a promise.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. That was very nicely done. Well, guys, that's the end of the saga of Britrasura, Citraketu, and I don't know how many chapters there were there. I know there are 6 or 7 of them that we've done. So, any questions, illuminations about this story? I think it's one of the best stories in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. Certainly one of the most philosophical stories in the entire Srimad Bhagavatam, especially when Narada and Angira are there and raise the baby, the dead baby, the son of Citraketu. And then the dead son starts talking from a spiritual platform. That's pretty strong. So if we haven't learned from that one, we should read that one all the time too. So you've got some points, Rama Raghava, I'm sure. What do you think?
No, Prabhu, not at this time.
Oh, okay. All right. So if we go back over the whole story and we look at the meaning of this story, and we find out that God himself came to the sacrificial arena, really, of Citraketu. And Citraketu was blessed in so many wonderful ways. The Lord was very, very pleased. Actually, Narada gave Citraketu the mantra. And he chanted that mantra for, I think it was only 2 weeks. Was it 10 days? It was like 10 days. He chanted the mantra and he saw God. In the first half period, he became the head of the Vidyagaras. So the Lord was very, very pleased, and Narada Muni was his direct spiritual master and educated him on these obeisances. And so every day we have all these markings that we mark our body with Vaishnava Tilak. And we mark it here, we mark it down here. We chant the names of God all around our body to wrap ourselves in the holy name, to protect ourselves in the holy name. So there is also the prayer that was in this previous chapter called Narayana Kuvacha Shield. That was the shield that Indra took to defeat Vritrasura. He had the shield, plus he had the weapon made of the bones and the thunderbolt. And so he easily defeated, not easily, but he did defeat the demon of Vritrasura. So this is a conclusion of how Vritrasura came about, why all this had to happen. And it's an amazing epic story, just like all these stories in the Srimad Bhagavatam. They're some of the most amazing epics of all time. They're ingenious because they come from the mind of God. And it says here that even Shiva doesn't know and understand the mind of God. It's beyond his understanding as well. So if Shiva doesn't understand it, what chance do we have? Now, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does say that one who understands the appearance and activities, okay, that person does not return to birth and death within the material world, but attains to his eternal abode. So in this story, we hear that one who understands the story of Citraketu and his liberation, also, they rise early in the morning and hear this story regularly, especially on festival days, that they would have no difficulty in entering into the kingdom of God again. So almost everything you read in the Srimad Bhagavatam is a great boon. Everything Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita is a great boon. Every verse that comes out of the mouth of God, or every verse that tells about God's quality, his pastimes, his names, his entourage, his appearances, his disappearances in the world. Just like even in this one, it says, after he gave Citraketu the boon, he left. Krishna hesitates. He don't stick around for the small talk. We said that last week. He ain't got time. He's got other places to be, right? He doesn't really have a busy appointment program. It's all within his just pastimes of enjoyment. All of these things are created for our benefit, actually. And it said so in the verse, I think it was text 22. We were reading in this chapter a minute ago. And it was saying that the Lord continues material existence for our benefit. This is our dream. This is not necessarily the dream of the Lord. We read in the previous chapter, the Lord actually has no interest in this place, very much like a child would not have interest in a sandcastle that was built on a beach. My friend Ekachaka Pran, one of my students, just wrote an album. It's called Shifting Sands. Great song. You should check that out on YouTube. You can find that now. But it talks about really everything we see here is based on shifting sands. Nothing will remain. There's nothing that will still be here except for Krishna. After the dissolution of all this, brought into the body of the Lord, only Krishna. Before this was manifest, only Krishna, right? Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchidananda Vigraha, and Adir Govinda, Sarva Karana Karana. So Krishna is the one without a second. He is actually the soul of your soul. He is the life of your life. You're a particulate of Krishna's life. You have no life without Krishna. You have no purpose without Krishna. It's just like if your hand denies you to feed the mouth, what? What use is the hand? It has to be an integral part of the body. If the hand is removed, it has no use anymore. Or we're useless in the material world. And there are many prayers by the Vaishnavas that approach the Lord by saying, "Dear Lord, I am useless. I have no value whatsoever. I'm the lowest among men. I have no redeeming virtues. But somehow or another, my spiritual master, out of his unlimited causeless compassion, has lifted me up, and he's placed me I'm at his lotus feet. So I offer everything I do through my spiritual master in that uplink of the Parampara Sampradaya, and it goes to Krishna. Just like when we offer our food, we always start with obeisances to the spiritual master. Why? We're actually offering our food through the spiritual masters, the transparent via medium, back to Krishna, because the spiritual master is very dear to the Lord. We're not so dear. You may be. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Prabhupada is dear to the Lord because he's actually carrying out the mission of the Lord. Prabhupada said that he was the only son of a spiritual master. I don't know if you remember that. But he said those words because he was carrying on the Father's business. He took over the spiritual master's business of liberating the world. And now there's hundreds of millions of people who've been affected by the life of Srila Prabhupada. Over 500 million books in print, every language in the world. Over 800 centers, new ones being opened every day. The other day we heard about the temple in Potomac. And when they had their temple opening at Janmashtami, they had 10,000 people go through. 10,000 people. That's what they were explaining. So anytime a temple opens, people are eager to be with Krishna. They need to see the form of the Lord. They need to see the deity. They need to hear this philosophy out of the mouth of Brahmins. They need to understand this philosophy. They need to offer some service to the Lord. They need to engage themselves in the activities of Bhagavat Dharma, which is professed in every chapter that we've read in the Srimad Bhagavatam since we started, and particularly in this chapter of Citraketu. Particularly. So to continue the material life with all of this stuff, it's really just for your dream. We don't have to be here. But the devotee doesn't care for liberation necessarily. Doesn't care if he goes back to the spiritual world, goes to hell, whatever he does. As long as he's engaged in the service of the Lord, he's completely happy. So that's his connection. So I'm going to kind of recap the chapter real quick, if you don't mind. And then you guys can make any comments you want. We'll probably have a little shorter class tonight. So it starts out basically with Parvati cursing Citraketu, but not starts out with it, but starts out with him traveling all around on this magnificent spaceship, basically offered to him by Vishnu, and he lived for millions of years, enjoying everything with all strength and with no deterioration. Did you hear about that? Could you imagine no deterioration? Every day I wake up, I see deterioration. I'm like, what? But he had no deterioration, and his body was not deteriorating. He came upon the assembly of Shiva surrounded by the Siddhas and the Charnas, and he began laughing and mocking, basically, because he said, in criticizing words, that they were acting like shameless, ordinary human beings. And they should be doing what they were doing in a solitary place, not in front of all these people, not with Mahadev and Parvati. So he was open about it, and it was very embarrassing. Shiva didn't even say anything. It wasn't worth a comment. Shiva simply smiled. And everybody in the assembly remained silent, right? Nobody wanted, you wouldn't want to have been in that assembly when he did that, because you wouldn't have wanted to say anything, because Shiva can burn you up just with a thought, you know? So it, just like he did Cupid, right? Was it Cupid? Did Shiva burn Cupid with a thought, right? To ash. So no one said anything. So Parvati spoke up in defense of her husband, and she was very critical. She said, alas, who is this upstart? She called Citraketu an upstart, a man who had seen God and was blessed with all of these wonderful powers and prowesses to go throughout the universe. And she called him an upstart. And she says, has he received the post simply to punish shameless persons such as us? Could you imagine that, him saying that, or her saying that? And then she went on to say, well, Brahma obviously doesn't know anything, and neither do these great sages around here, including the four Kumaras. They don't know anything about religion, because otherwise they would have certainly corrected us by now. Right? So she's bearing down on him. Has any man ever heard a woman? Because she can lay it on you, buddy. She knows exactly where to hit home. It's a bullseye to the heart every single time. It's a great gift that women have to keep us men in line. I'll be honest with you. They know how to chastise a man. So she did chastise him, and in no uncertain terms. And she said that because he had done this, it was very critical to her husband, and therefore she had to curse him to become a demon in the material world. But after he'd achieved such a great post, right, he became the biggest demon in the whole world. Does this remind you of the story of Jaya Vijaya a little bit, in a way? You see what I'm saying? Because they were the doorkeepers, and they came to the material world, and they were Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha, and they took over the whole place too. So that's the idea. Vritrasura took over the whole place, and they finally had to go get some help from Vishnu. So he told them, he came to them and explained wonderful prayers that they did for him, by the way. This is Ananta Shesha who appeared, right? The incarnation of Ananta Shesha, who came to the sacrificial arena. Did you know that? So he gave those boons to Citraketu and lived. It said that his body was as white as the stems of the white lotus flower. Very beautiful description of the Lord. And so after Citraketu was cursed, he was of such good character. He was of such good character that he bowed down to Mother Parvati with folded hands and offered her respects. And he called her my dear mother. And he told her that I gladly accept the curse that you have given, because guess what? It's my karma. All this stuff happens for karma. All this stuff is all the results of our karma. Somehow he was affected by karma, just like Pariksit was affected by, his attachment, right, to the body of the deer. So the same thing. So what happens, whatever we're attached to, and we remember at the time of death, we attain to that situation without fail. So the attraction between a husband and a wife, for an example, is a very strong attraction, one of the greatest attractions there is. Matter of fact, so strong that the world is, all procreation is taking place by that attraction. There's no question about it. And it's there for the continuation of Maya to exist in a temporary manifestation that is not real. We are here building a house in a place on shifting sands. Okay? The house will fall down. We don't want it to. We don't like hearing about it. We want the house to last forever. We want the marriage to last forever. We want the children to last forever. We want the wealth to last forever. We want the fame to last forever. Has it ever lasted forever for anyone other than Krishna? Yeah, well, his servants maybe. Okay. All right. But for us who are separated, nobody remembers you after 2 generations. They're not even coming to your gravesite if you have one in America. We're so puffed up. We want our own samadhi every time we die, even though we're alcoholics and drug addicts and whatever. We're going to have a beautiful gravesite with a nice stone where people can come and worship even after our death. Right? It's not a samadhi. We were not fixed in consciousness. We went to hell. We had to go through all these species again to come back to human life. We got to human life and we made bad choices. Now we're going back through the whole scenario again. How many times do you want to do that? You can sign up for that trip as many times as you want to go. Or let's just say you're attracted to the heavenly planets and you're attracted to wonderful, pious sacrifices for good merit and in the material world. Well, let's say that you become a Chandra or Siddha or somebody like that. You're in the highest heavenly planets. We can see that even envy and lust and greed exist even in the highest material planets. You've heard the story of Indra and how many times he's had to be cursed due to his false ego and pride, right? I mean, what else do you want to hear? Is that where you want to go? How long will that last? Then what? So we really have to kind of get down and get gritty with ourselves and come to a real super duper conclusion that this ain't it. It's called Maya. That means that which is not. Oh, it's real. It just said it in the last chapter. It's real, but it's temporary. Temporary will never satisfy your immortal soul. It's not possible. It's not possible. It's like holding a candle to the sun. You will never get the light you're looking for from that candle or from a glowworm, it said in one of these previous chapters. It said any illumination that we can offer according to the Lord, it's just like a little glowworm in the presence of the Lord. It's nothing. We can't even say anything about God. He's so great. Well, whatever little bit we know, Shiva says he doesn't even know. So think about it. Abrahma bhuvanal loka, lokoyam karma bandhana, right? Wherever you go. Okay, you'll live 3.5 trillion years, whatever, good luck. Was that fun? Now it's time to come back down and you can be an amoeba again if you'd like. You go through the whole scenario. So these chapters were hard truths. These chapters were enlightening realities, especially when we heard from the dead boy and what he had to say. I've had millions of parents. Which ones are you? So please, our affection needs to run to God. Our love needs to run to God. Our service needs to run to God. Our mind and our thoughts need to run only to God. Because when they're deviated, we put ourselves in jeopardy of karmic retribution, which will not be that much fun for you, okay, in the long run. So we have to give that up. We have to look at this very, very carefully. So in this chapter, it ends by saying that if a person just hears the story of Citraketu, that their life is sublime and that they can easily return back home, back to Godhead. So that is the idea. And the material body, one thing I wanted to say from my own realization, and then I want to read one verse to you and then we'll open this up. You know, I've used this story so many times because it's the only story I got. It's my story. And, you know, when I read about how we're supposed to feel if we see things from a spiritual perspective, when I read about that, and I compare that to the way we think when we're in our mind, in our material mind, and our senses, right? The only thing that's going to put us in that state is to connect the mind and the senses to Krishna somehow through devotional activity. because otherwise it's separated behavior. And so we just become karmic. But I was going to mention that when I drowned in the lake, and I've mentioned this story a couple of times. I don't know if you guys remember, but we were little kids. I was just about 8 years old. We were playing with a log, and the log didn't come back in time. My body cramped, and I floated to the bottom of the lake, and I inhaled the water. And I knew I was dying. I mean, I knew I was going to die. It felt familiar. I was afraid at first, but after, unconsciousness, it wasn't that big a deal because you're unconscious. And but when I was on the beach and my brother was trying to wake me up, I felt myself kind of floating above this body, this little boy's body. And I felt what they're talking about here. I didn't want to go back to the body. I wanted to go wherever the silhouettes were in the sky. I didn't want to go back into that body, even though it was perfect, even though I had a whole life ahead of me. I just wasn't interested, because the body is pain. The body is pleasure. The body is, you're in the middle of all of this. You're experiencing pain and pleasure. And I was free from pain when I was in that position. And I could look at the body and realize that this is not really what this is about. It's about whatever lies beyond. About that time my brother hits me, I go back into the body, and I'm completely miserable. I'm coughing up lava water, I mean, that's what it feels like. And I'm just completely miserable. And I'm yelling at my brother for saving my life. I'm going, why did you do that? I didn't want my life saved. I wanted to continue on in the spiritual way, because this body, we're hauling this thing around, guys. We're literally hauling this thing around. And it seems like it gets more difficult every year that goes by to keep it up. But Prabhupada says, the soul has a desire to experience unlimited life, the unlimited spirit, the freedom that comes with spiritual emancipation, to come and go within the universe, unrestricted, to be involved, like Citraketu. We all have that desire, but we're being grounded in a mortal coil. And that coil, we are bound up in it. We're floating in various airs within the heart, and we're destined to die. So we have to be in anxiety. We don't know if it's today. We don't know if it's tomorrow, next month, next year. Who knows? You could be 2 years old. You could die the next day. Right? So the point is everyone here is in a state of anxiety and cannot get out of it unless they do not identify with the body. So these stories are all designed to bring us to that stage of realization, so that we can, at the time of death, not be so attached to the material world and to the temporary manifestations of the material world, but instead we can let our mind, like the great Bhishma did, let my mind run only to the lotus feet of Sri Krishna. So that's the idea of all of these chapters. And there's one verse that I'd like to read to you. Okay. So it says here, persons, this is text 31. Well, wait just a minute. Wait just a minute. Let me see. I think I've got another one I wanted to read. No, that's it. Okay, here it is. Text 28. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. They don't covet or try to hold on to something that's not theirs, something that's temporary. They give it all back in their heart and soul to the Lord. And if they have nothing to give, they still give it mentally. You can offer millions of decorated cows in charity tonight to the Brahmins if you want to. It's that quick. You can do it. You can burn your finger on sweet rice that you're boiling for the Lord. Why not? Why not live in a reality that is real? This is not a real reality. The only real thing about it, the only permanent thing about it, is the soul and its engagement in devotional service to the Supreme Lord. These chapters teach us that. And so therefore we have to do that. It goes on to say, as one mistakenly considers a flower garland to be a snake or experiences happiness or distress in a dream, so in the material world, by lack of careful consideration, we differentiate between happiness and stress, considering one to be good and the other bad. Guess what? They're all bad. It's all bad. Why is it all bad? Well, it's all good if you use it for Krishna. You can make it all good just like that. It's a state of consciousness. It's an instantaneous act. It's a be here now moment, just like we're here now, and we're talking about God. And guess what? We're connected. And you know what? There's no sin in what we're doing. And as a matter of fact, it's so meritorious that it will deliver you back to the spiritual kingdom of God. Does that feel good to you tonight? Let me ask you, does that feel good? Because it should. It should. If you know the condition, just turn on the news. Don't do it. But if you did turn on the news, which I would not recommend, you will see how many murders were today, how many people were dead. It's awful what we're doing in the material world, because people crash and burn here because they don't have Krishna. That's it. They crash and burn because they don't have Krishna. If they had Krishna, you're not going to crash and burn anymore. And if you do, it could be part of a story, some big drama that Krishna's got going, and you're involved in it. And that'd be pretty cool, right? Just like Arjuna, check him out. Ended up on a battlefield killing all his whole family. What? And it was the will of God. Look into it, and you'll see why it had to happen. And you'll understand that it was perfect, and that everybody was liberated, and that everybody was benefited. Krishna doesn't pay any attention to these material bodies. They're useless. All it is 25 material elements in a bag. Think about it. Soul's floating around in this thing. The soul don't want to be here. Soul wants that freedom. Okay, so it says that persons engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, have naturally perfect knowledge and detachment from the material world. Therefore, such devotees are not interested. They're not interested. So we have to get to the point in our lives where when we're tempted by Maya and we think that some temporary pleasure or benefit that's separated from your Krishna consciousness is good, we need to be able to say, not interested, right? There used to be a campaign, just say no. Remember that? So just say no. What's the problem? What's the problem? N-O. It's two little letters. It's not hard to say. Just say no and say yes to Krishna. That's where yoga starts, yama niyama, right? Say no to the bad stuff, yes to the good stuff. Move forward in your spiritual life, and everything will be sublime. And so the dear Citraketu, after Shiva eulogized him after he took his curse, Shiva said, where's that one at? It's where did Shiva say? Trying to find that one again. Oh, he just said, don't be so astonished by the character of great Vaishnavas, because they can actually do anything on behalf of the Lord. And they do it immediately. Just like we read about, go get the body of this one devotee. Get his body. We're going to use it to make these things to kill Vritrasura. Remember that in the previous chapters? He said, go ask him for his body. He'll immediately give it if you tell him that the 4 Kamaras ask or whatever. He goes, because he's dedicated. So they go and say, yeah. He said, oh, of course. And he gave a beautiful prayer. He said, why would I want to keep this thing if I can use it in my devotional service? You requested, of course. You may have it. So they use that to create the weapon. So all of these things are there in all these previous chapters. I invite everybody to go back and read these over and over and over and over and over again. We should raise our children in this knowledge, and we should expound this knowledge everywhere. So our goal is to bring out these stories into individual incarnations of God and the stories that surround those incarnations, and have that on every coffee table and every hotel room and everything we can find all over the world. That's what we'd love to do. Now, whether we can ever do that physically or not, we're doing it mentally right now. We're distributing hundreds of millions of books about the avatars of the Lord. We're doing it in our mind right now. Are you doing it with me? I hope so. What a great sacrifice, because we got the big Srimad Bhagavatam day coming up, right? Not far from now, right? With the big book distribution day coming up, where everybody has to get a set of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? It's coming right up. So we want to distribute books. We want to make sure this information gets disseminated. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. And if anybody's got any commentary or question, please bring it to the table at this time. I'm a Raghava. I know you want to say something. I'm looking right at you. I know you want to say something. What you got? You got something good. I swear I know it's got to be.
Not today, Prabhu.
You're killing us here. See, this is suspense. The Vaishnava has created suspense. So next time we're gonna demand.
You said it all already.
Oh no. Next time we're gonna demand that you just open up and spill out. That's what we need, because it's full of nectar in there. I know it is. Okay. So Rangavati, Prabhuji, you got anything you want to offer? This is the finish of this story, so we're concluded. This don't have to be on the tape. This is just between us, you know.
Oh, I don't know. I just find when we was reading this history tonight, it's the same for the whole of Srimad Bhagavatam. It just opens you up to a whole world that you're not aware of, because we're just so stovepiped. We're just a frog in the well, and yet there's all this all going on around us, all out there in the rest of the material world, in the higher planetary systems, etc. All these personalities, and we're just a fleck against them, because they live for millions of years in comparison to us, and we're thinking that we're so big. You know, these politicians are thinking they're so big, especially one in particular at the moment, and we're not. We're just so, we're so insignificant.
Yeah,
and so that's what I always get when I'm reading these things with you.
Well, one of the things about Srimad Bhagavatam that I like, because they're histories and they're stories, and these are happening. These are eternal stories. They're going on in every universe, everywhere, trillions of universes simultaneously. Krishna's expanded into all of them. Yeah, Jiva souls are everywhere. I was just reading the other day that there are as many Jiva souls as there are atoms. I just read that. I'm like, what? So try to imagine life is literally everywhere. You may not see it because you don't have eyes to see it, or you don't have a body to go experience it. You can't go to a fire planet in a water body and survive it, right? So, you know, these are real situations, but we hear the science of this in the Srimad Bhagavatam. We hear the great histories of this. You're talking about, in some cases, these stories they're millions and millions and millions of years old. They are millions of years old. Actually, these stories are eternal. They're eternal, just like time. Time is eternal. Time is eternal. The material world is eternal. What's not eternal? Does anybody know what is not eternal? You know what it is? No?
Karma.
Thank you. Rama Raghava, you got it, baby. All right. Thank you, sir. Karma is not eternal. You can change your karma right now. You can make a decision. You made a decision tonight when you tuned in. You could have done anything else you wanted to do. You could have done any kind of thing. You could be having an ice cream cone right now down at Baskin Robbins. Just think. But instead, you decided to be austere and come in here and hear this Srimad Bhagavatam, this beautiful story of Citraketu, and now you're sinless. You got to go forward and remain sinless. The only way to do it is Harinama, Harinama, Harinama Eva Kevalam. You got to do it nonstop. You got to pray unceasingly. You got to, hallowed be thy name. Pray from the rising to the setting of the sun. Right? Anyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. This is already Shastric and other scriptures. I mean, this is widely known, even in other scriptures. So we should not be so astonished that if we just call on God's name, we're electrified, shaktified. And you can also be a conduit. You can be a conduit. Whatever you've heard, whatever you know, whatever you can say, everyone you come in contact with, you can be a desire tree. You can be a touchstone. Just give them a little bit. I go wherever I go. I know I'm not going to see these people again. What? I'm not trying to maintain some persona. These people. No, I just tell them Hare Krishna. Or we could just say what you could just ask them any question you want to about their spiritual life. How are they feeling? And then give them a book or at least send them to the database. You can send anybody. They may go. That's their business. But you're disseminating this information, and that's what we have to do. We have to figure ways to do it. Now, if you can't personally do it, you can do it online, or you could promote, or you could support people who are doing it, right? That'd be fine. If somebody's doing it and you want to promote and help them, do it. That's great. So that's the idea. You know, we got behind Srila Prabhupada because he was doing it, and the whole world was carried along with that. So we're just seeing the beginning of this Chaitanya era. We don't understand how wonderful this is going to be. I'm meeting people all the time. Let me just tell you one little story. I just got to tell you. I met a boy the other day, and he just came to the program, and he was listening to Kirtan. He liked it and so forth. I asked him, I said, what is he doing? He's going to be a correctional officer because he wants to help people in distress. I said, well, that's interesting. You want to help people in distress? That's a pretty good idea. That's what we're trying to do here in this Hare Krishna movement. So he said, yeah, but I'm not a Hare Krishna. And I said, oh, okay. Well, what are you? He said, well, I just have my own philosophy. I said, oh, well, could you tell me what that is? I'd really like to kind of know. So he started talking, and the more he's talking, I'm starting to well up with tears. Because everything that he is saying is right out of Bhagavad Gita. I'm amazed. I'm like, where did you learn this information? He goes, I don't know where I learned it. This information is in the ether now, guys. These books, millions, hundreds of millions of books, this chanting is going around everywhere. Somehow or another, it's affecting the lives of people. And maybe he had experience in previous life because he's only a 20-year-old guy. So maybe this was, he's coming back, after knowing it in previous lives, and he's starting to expound on it. He wants to move into Brahmachari ashram, literally. Because I said, everything you said was exactly what I was about to say to you. I said, I think you are a Hare Krishna. He said, well, I must agree with you then if that's the case. So everyone must agree with you. Because the absolute truth is the absolute truth. And you got it. And you can share it. Okay? You guys are fun, man. Y'all are bringing me a lot of happiness right now. Just looking at your smiling face there. All right, I'm done. Hey, thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It's so nice to have Jai Krishna back in town, as they say. And Rama Raghava, you and your illustrious family, all so wonderful and beautiful. We can't thank you guys enough. Thank you, Eunice. We appreciate you. Oh, look at it, hero. Man, we love you. We just can't get enough of you guys. And specifically want to thank Rangavati and Bhavananda. They are jacked up in Krishna consciousness. That's the only way I know to put it. Jacked up. They are high on spiritual life. Look at Bob. You can see he's completely blown away back there. Look at it. I applaud you all. Thank you for being such stalwarts.
Hare Krishna.
We'll let you guys know when the programs are picking up and what we're going to do next, okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again.
So, by the
Hare
way, we'll
Krishna.
plan on having a program in Augusta with you all visiting us in November sometime.
Nice. Nice. Well, enjoy Radhastami. I think it's Wednesday night, so enjoy Radhastami. We fast till noon. And then nothing but just one thing after the next this weekend. It's just auspicious. I mean, if you look at the Vaishnav calendar, it's back to back to back. Good stuff. So very auspicious time for everyone, okay?
Okay.
Chant Hare Krishna.
All right.
Let's do it. One last time.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Krishna Krishna.
Hare
Hare.
Hare Ram.
Hare Rama. Hare Rama. Rama
Rama,
Hare
Hare
Hare.
Hare Hare.
Hare
Haribo.
Hare Hare
Thank
Hare
you.
Bo.